Hi, this is Mass Enterprises. Definitely, we about to talk about Shy. If you're a Shy head, let's talk about it. I'm going to give you a breakdown of the Shy in less than 30 minutes and from start to finish. And I want you to understand, this is a great show. Check out the show. There's going to be some spoilers in here. I'm going to talk about all 3 seasons thus far and what we can possibly look forward to for the 4th season when it gets renewed. And we just going to talk about the Shy right now. For all the fans, let's just check it out. Let's just break it down. Here's a breakdown right now. All right. So basically, you have Brandon and Jerica, Kevin, Papa, and Jake. You have the OG Quentin. You have Miss Ethel, Ronnie's grandmother. You have Maisha, childhood school friend of Kevin, Papa, and Jake. All right, so you have Emmett, Brandon, and Kevin. The roles of women in this show can be either mothers, grandmothers, detectives, and mayoral promising candidates. So this show first starts out with Jason, who is a basketball high school hopeful, and Coogie. All right, when these 2 people in the Shy die, everything starts, the interaction between all of the characters. And then that's when you see Tracy, who's Jason's mom, the basketball hopeful. You see her interact with Ronnie, who is basically the neighborhood drunk, the neighborhood wino. She used to have a relationship with Ronnie. So what she does is she's distraught because her kid was gunned down and she wants revenge. So that's when she approaches Ronnie and asks him to handle it. And when she said handle it, she meant handle it with some get back. So Ronnie basically wasn't a street dude. Ronnie was the neighborhood wino, the neighborhood drunk. But he was on that level in the street where he saw everything. He could go to some of the dope dealers and ask them, did they hear anything? And try to find out. And because Tracy boosted him up to try to get some revenge, she, of course, or he, of course, was going to try to take it there to actually get revenge. He wasn't just asking questions to all the drug dealers. He could have just did that and then went to the cops, but he didn't. He wanted to handle it because Tracy, and we'll find out later in the story, we'll find out that she had a hold on Ronnie. And until he became distant, Jason was actually like it was his stepson, and he was real close to Jason. But until he became distant and dropped out of their lives, he didn't have that connection anymore. But when Tracy came to him and told him, listen, I need you to handle this, it's like he just jumped into revenge mode all of a sudden. All right, so after asking questions, of course, Ronnie found out a few things, but he found out his greatest information from the detective who was working the scene. And he told them that there was a boy standing over the body and his name was Coogie. This is our second death that actually started the whole Shy movement, the whole Shy program. Because after Coogie's murder, everything started. So Ronnie goes to hunt this kid down. He has a confrontation. He noticed that the guy, that Coogie took the chain off of Jason, and it was actually just an innocent standing over the body, and he took something off the body, but Ronnie wasn't going for it. He knew he gave Jason that chain, so he killed Coogie. Gun went off. All right, so now Coogie had a mother too. Her name was Laverne. She's also the mother of Brandon, who is a local guy in the neighborhood as well. He's a cook, he's a chef, and Laverne is absolutely distraught with the death of her son, Coogie. She wanted to lead in the right direction, and this just happened, Chicago, the streets took her son, so this pushed her closer to her boyfriend, Greavy, who she was dating, and she actually got married to him. All right, and of course, this, after you got 2 families now grieving, you have the return of an old gangster named Quentin, Q, he's called, and he left the neighborhood in charge, or in the hands of Trice. Trice is a gangster as well, and he started asking questions like what happened, because Trice was to see to it that basketball hopefuls and people with promising futures were not touched, like they had a pass in the hood. And this didn't happen. Jason, who was a basketball hopeful, got killed. So now Quentin has returned, the OG, the old gangster. He's returned to ask questions of Trice, who he left the neighborhood in the hands of. The drug business, everything, the guns, everything. He left for Cuba years before retiring, and he left everything in the hands of Trice. So what we see is that Kevin, who's now been seen by Ronnie, who's the neighborhood wino who killed Coogie, one of the kids that's propelled the story forward. Now Kevin's scared. So Kevin goes to his 2 friends, Jake and Papa, and he asks Jake specifically, help him, he needs some protection. So Jake goes to his brother, Reg, who actually works for Trice, the gangster. gangster who the neighborhood was left in the hands of by the old gangster Quentin, and he asked him for a gun. So Jake gets the gun from Reg and gives it to Kevin. So now when Ronnie tries to come for him, because he knows that Ronnie saw him, he knows that Ronnie saw him, Ronnie knows that he saw him. So now Ronnie is trying to, cover this up now, because he killed a kid in the hood, being pushed up by Tracy, who's his ex. So what happens is Kevin, who was seen at the scene of the crime when Ronnie killed Cool, now be hunted down by Ron to make sure he's not going to talk, so to speak. Hey, you didn't see anything. You didn't see what you thought you saw and this kind of thing, and, threaten him, if anything, and just make sure he didn't talk. So, of course, Kevin was scared. So, at the same time, you have Brandon, who was told by Kevin that was the guy who shot your brother, Ronnie. So, you have two people actually looking out for Ronnie, as well as feeling threatened by Ronnie. And so, Ronnie he's in a sandwich now. So, at the time that he comes and tries to muscle Kevin into not saying anything, Brandon is there to be sort of the hero to say, get off that little man. I heard you killed my brother. And at that point, the gun goes off and Ronnie is shot. So now you got it going from Jason was the first murder to Coogie, which set off this chain reaction with all these characters. And now Ronnie's come full circle, is shot. So at that point, Ronnie, he can't go to the regular emergency room, because then it creates more suspicion. So he goes to where he knows he's comfortable, which is his grandmother's house, Miss Ethel. So now he's in the house bleeding out. And Jada, who's taking care of Miss Ethel, now stitches him up. So now he gets stitched up, but now he's still on the street. And now you got the aftermath of Kevin and Brandon knowing Ronnie was shot. So now they got this on their conscience. Now, spoiler alert, it comes out and it turns out that the gun was shot by Kevin. Kevin had the gun. That gun that was used, or that was gotten from Jake. Jake got it from his brother Reg. Reg works for Trice. Trice is in charge of the city by Quentin, who's the OG. So now after he shoots Ronnie, now he's got it on his conscience. Oh my God, I shot somebody. So now Kevin is actually being initiated into a level of violence on the streets, and he wasn't ready for it. So now at the same time, he goes and, says that he saw the murder of Coogie. He saw who murdered. So now he's in a rock and a hard place between telling what he saw and as well as knowing that he shot somebody. But Brandon comes to his rescue and says, listen, give me the gun. I'll say I did it, or if it gets there, but we just won't say anything. So now they got a little special secret between them, and Ronnie knows what happened to him, and it's that awkwardness from that point on that happens between those three characters, Brandon and Kevin, knowing that Kevin shot Ron. So at this point, Brandon is still upset because he is Ronnie, this annoying character, took his brother out, killed his brother. So now he really just wants something bad to happen to Ronnie. He just really wants something bad. And the question is, Kevin, are you going to testify? Kevin is battling the idea of he doesn't want to look like a snitch in the eyes of, his community. It's dangerous. So there you go. So then the funny thing is that, Ronnie trying to be the street guy to go out and handle, the death of Jason and, not having the street wherewithal or the intelligence to find out really what was going to happen, nor the muscle to, get some retaliation. He doesn't know that Q, who is the OG, has already initiated some questioning, among Trice, and it comes to find out that what happened was Trice was the one who killed Jason, and he killed him, and this other cop right here, Detective Wallace, put his foot on his neck to make sure he took his last breath after he was on the ground and shot. So Trice killed him. Detective Wallace made sure he was dead. So this was a 1-2 punch against this young kid who was supposed to be protected. He had a future, and his life was taken just senselessly because he walked up on those two actually going through a gun transaction and getting ready to trade money and get ready to trade guns. So he walked up on a gun trade and he actually just stepped back and said, hey, I didn't see anything. But this guy Trice would not let it go. He ran him down. He caught him from the other side of the street, and when Jason ran out past the block, he shot him in the back. He shot a child in the back, which was a real coward move. Well, spoiler alert, what happens is he gets dealt with, Trice gets dealt with, but before Trice actually gets dealt with, before he's actually murdered for his part in killing Jason, he lets loose one of the big secrets, which is that Detective Wallace was the one who squeezed the life out of him with his foot while he was on the ground and made sure that he was dead. So Quentin is completely motivated to go and handle this, and after he kills Trice, or after he has Reg kidnap Trice in the trunk of the car, bring him to an undisclosed location and blow his brains brains out. He then proceeds in inviting Detective Wallace to a bar in which he closes the blinds and closes the doors and kills Detective Wallace, cuts his throat. And then this is when the ironic thing is that Ronnie thought he could go and handle it, but he didn't have the muscle, nor did he know the streets in a way to actually get the culprit dealt with, but instead he killed an innocent kid trying to be something he was not. When Quentin, the OG who ran the city, was able to come back and get the culprits that were directly responsible for it and handle. This is the ironic thing about these two murders of these two children. They happened, these children were in the wrong place at the wrong time, but they started by this particular character who was trying to kill and handle something when he wasn't prepared, being pushed up by his girlfriend Tracy, which was Jason's mother, into something he wasn't ready for. And children lost their lives as well. So we move on. Many people died in that first season of The Shot. You had about 4 to 5 killings in the first season, and then you moved on to the second season where character Brandon was actually taken out of the rotation of the list of players, and you didn't know why. You can assume that he was getting ready to testify against Duda, and this is why he was taken off the chessboard. Now, many watchers of The Shot will have many questions, but he was strategically taken off the board based on the fact that he was getting ready to go up against one of the major players in the streets and getting ready to testify. And of course, Duda or Otis Perry had a lot of cops on the payroll, and the only thing had to happen was them passing the word that you have a rat, you have somebody getting ready to testify. So in classic mob movie type of fashion, Brandon was eliminated, subtracted from the chessboard. Now, one of the other murders that happened in the second season was the murder of Reg. Reg was making a lot of mistakes under the tutelage of Otis Perry, but there's many things that he didn't listen to. He wanted to do things his way. So as a result, he was dealt with. He was removed from the chessboard, and he was removed because he was not a leader. He wasn't able to lead that crew. He was gung-ho and well happy to get in the position, but once he got there, he made a lot of mistakes. Otis Perry reminded him of it, told him that many things were not going well under his leadership, and as a result, he was replaced. Otis Perry, it looked like his replacement was going to be his younger brother. It looked like he was going to replace him with some of the other foot soldiers from the 69th Street mob. One of the most disturbing parts of the season was when you had the senseless beating of an old elderly person like Miss Ethel. She was beat worse than any other person, any male on the show. This was very disturbing to watch. Spoiler alert, that's what had Ronnie, once he was arrested. He was actually arrested after he was shot by Kevin. He was actually arrested because he turned himself in and admitted that he did kill Cookie. He was arrested, sent to prison. Once he was in prison and he heard about his grandmother, Miss Ethel, being senselessly beaten in a home, he rushed to get out. He rushed to avoid doing his time. And karma, as karma would have it in this situation, he had a unpaid debt on his self, and the streets knew that. So that's why you fast forward a little bit later into the third season, Ronnie was eliminated from the chessboard as well. He was eliminated because he escaped from serving his dad. He was supposed to serve his dad, and he was supposed to do time for the senseless murder of a young child from the Chicago streets. But what he did was he wanted to get out to take care of his grandma, so much that he went to a neo-Nazi. He gave him a recipe for some Pluto wine, toilet wine, and he was hooked up then with his attorney. His attorney got him off by saying he was just inebriated and didn't know what he was saying when he confessed to the murder of. So it was a kind of underhanded thing for him to try to get out, and he paid for it with his life. The moment things started going good for him, the moment he started getting a little money, the moment he things started to look up for him, everything just turned right when he was murdered because of that. Now, prior to him being murdered, he was able to rescue a young girl, Keisha, which is Kevin's sister, which is Nina and Andrea's daughter. He was able to rescue her because she was kidnapped. She was seeing an older man, a track team coach. She was a track runner. She was seeing him, and a little bit later, there was another guy in the neighborhood named Omari who was fond of track runners, fond of a late wife in which ran track, reminded him of Keisha, and he kidnapped her, kept her in the basement for more than 3 weeks, allegedly. And what happened was Ronnie, feeling the guilt of, what he had done done, he went and found this girl. He asked around, he asked questions in the neighborhood, and he found Keisha, and they were able to rescue her and bring her back. And at that point, he was looked at as a hero. And once he was looked at as a hero, things started looking up for him. He started getting money. People donated to him. People were saying things nice about him. They looked at him as a hero or a person with the strength for two. And he was feeling good. And at that point, his life was snuffed from him. Because of that debt that he did not pay, he avoided paying that debt or doing that time for the deaf Coogie, even though he helped Keisha get her freedom from out of that basement from that sicko kidnapper. Now, the thing about it is that the guy who killed Ronnie was a friend, close friend of Coogie, who we didn't have time to see because the character wasn't shown a whole lot of backstory. He was just shown as a kid who was kind of mischievous, but just at the same time was a nice, happy, portrayed as a real good-spirited kid who was just in the neighborhood. And you got Tiff and Emmett, they get married. You have Drea and Nina still together married. You have Jada and Darnell eyeing each other. Darnell actually getting a divorce from the 3 baby mamas that he had staying with him. He got a divorce from the one he was married to, and now eyeing his old flame, Jada, which is Emmett's mother. Emmett not wanting them to get back together because he felt as though his father was still a deadbeat. Yet his father was actually trying to tell him to grow up in the same way that Quentin or Q was trying to tell him to grow up. Now what we see with the rise of Doodah Otis Perry was the demise of OG Quentin. OG Quentin was actually handled, and as the Shy storyline says, he was dealt with because of the murdering of a cop, and he was dealt with because of the rash decision he made to kill the cop and kill Trice. He was dealt with because of that. And then you see the rise of Otis Perry, or aka Doodah, the owner of Perry's Pizza, the mayor-to-be. You see that Otis Perry does become mayor. He runs against Camille, which is played by the cameo of Lena Waithe, one of the writers of the show. He runs against her. She is a mayoral candidate. He's a mayoral candidate, but Otis Perry does win the mayor position. And then he can actually slide up under the radar a little bit more as not only the street chair to the 69th Street Mall, but also he can be mayor and do his dirt from within the ranks of a political city position. So he is a mayor, but he's running drugs, running dope. He is doing all types of other business up under the scenes of just appearing to be a square politician. He's just appearing to be a square politician, but he's doing all kinds of other business up under the scene. So he is what is known as a corrupt politician. You got the end of the Coogie's place in the taco food truck with the demise of Brent. One of the last scenes that you see in season 2 was him looking out of the In the Taco Coogie's food truck at mayor-to-be Otis Perry doing a groundbreaking of a hospital or other type of city municipal building, doing a groundbreaking, cutting a ribbon. But then he kind of stared right back at Brandon, who's inside the truck with these Detective Toussaint and Detective Cruz, which he was going to snitch to about Otis Perry. So you just can only assume that in good writing in the story, he is taken off the chessboard because of that. So you got the continuation of Brandon's business through Emmett, who is a serial entrepreneur in a way of him doing catering instead with a van, just catering parties.